I'm going to press 0 to go back to the main menu, and now I'm ready to start my data run. Let me talk quickly about setting up the rod or using the rod and the FlowTracker when we're making the measurement. Orientation is very important. The orientation should always be perpendicular to the tag line. The FlowTracker doesn't have a compass inside of it, and so we need to fix its orientation during the measurement. Now we're actually ready to make a data run or start our discharge measurement. I'm going to press number 3. The first thing that comes up is it's going to ask me for the name of the site. So I'm going to press 1, and I can put in up to 8 alphanumeric characters. And number 2 is the file extension. Typically I use that as the measurement number, so in this case we'll call it 001. The operator, JVS, that's me, that's the initials. And it says press QC menu at any time for the gauge data.
A few comments about the gauge data. There's 5 parameters when we input the gauge data. The first one is water level, then rated Q, time, location, and any comments you want to make about the site at that time. You can hit QC menu and input the gauge data at any time during the measurement. It's not really a requirement. It's strictly for documentation purposes, and it will not affect the results.
In this case, we're in a natural stream. We don't have a water level recorder here or a discharge rating, so we can just leave those fields blank. They won't affect your measurement at all. The next, again, what I ran it previously is the QC test. I'm going to skip it for right now and get on to the measurement. So when I start my measurement, the first thing I want to do is go to my starting edge. And the starting edge of water, in this case, is 3.9 meters.
A comment about subdividing the river for a discharge measurement. We divide the river into subsections to get a better representation of the velocity, the depth, and the area. Typically, 20 stations are recommended, keeping the flow within each subsection within 5%. These subsections can be of equal width, going across the river, or they can be of unequal width. An example where you would want to use an unequal width subsection is if your flow is gathered in the center part of your river. In this case, you would use wider subsections along the edges and narrow the subsections as you approach the higher flow section in the river.
Okay, so now I'm at my starting edge, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my location. I'm going to read the tag line. The tag line reads at the very edge of water is at 3.90 meters. So I press set location and enter 3.90 meters. The next thing that I'm asked to select is the left edge or the right edge of water. I'm going to press the toggle LEW/REW. For REW means right edge of water. The next thing I need to set is the depth. In some cases, the depth will be 0 at your starting edge, but in this instance there is actually a depth at the starting edge, which I'll read with my wading rod. Okay, on my wading rod it reads 0.13 meters. So I press set depth and I enter in 0.13 meters. And now it says press next station to begin. So I've put in my location, I've set the orientation to be starting on the right edge of the water, I've set my depth, and I'm ready to press next station. So now I'm going to my first location. In this case, because I'm at 3.9, I'm going to start at 4.05. So I put set location and I enter in 4.05. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the depth. I set the rod at 4.05 and my depth is right at 0.2 meters. So set depth, 0.2 meters. And now it asks me to it says press measure to begin, but I have to make sure that I'm using the correct velocity method to determine mean velocity. So there's many methods that use to determine what the mean velocity is. In this case, we're going to use the 6/10 because we're in very shallow water. On the set method, you can see a plus sign, and I just toggle this until it says 0.6. Okay, I've set it at the 6/10 depth. I have to position myself so I won't obstruct the flow velocity, and I press measure to begin. Okay, so now our measurement is complete, and it gives me a velocity reading of 0.032 meters per second. I have a velocity variation of 1,000th of a meter per second, an angle of 2 degrees, an SNR value of 18. The spikes were 0, and the boundary was best. Okay, I have the ability to accept or repeat. Everything looks in line to me, so I'm going to accept the measurement and go to the next location. The FlowTracker remembers the actual width that we use for this station, and for the next station it's going to add that width to where I'm at. So what I'm reading right now as I press next station, it says station 2, location 4.2. So I'm going to position the rod at 4.2 meters. Again, I'm going to read the depth. The depth is at 0.2 meters, which is what I had before. And again, it brings the same depth over from the previous measurement. The 6/10 method. So actually everything should be in place. I'm going to press measure. While I'm actually making the measurement, again, because the instrument can't sense its own motion, it's very important that I keep it stable. Don't angle it during the measurement. That'll create some error. Also, if there's any debris floating down, I want to make sure that the debris stays off the probe head. Again, any debris that collects along the probe, number one, will disturb the velocity measurement, but also it can contaminate the signal. It can get in the sample volume and contaminate the signal. Okay, so now my measurement's complete. My velocity reading was 0.026. The variation of velocity was 1,000th of a meter per second. The angle was 3 degrees. The SNR was 16.5. Spikes were 0 and the boundary was best, so I'll accept. Okay, now out to my station number 3, and I've got a depth of 0.39 meters. I'm going to set my location of 5.05 and my depth of 0.39 meters. And in this case, I'm going to change, because I'm getting a little deeper here, I'm going to change to the 0.2.8 method. So I do that before I make my first measurement, and I toggle method, and on the reading, on the display, it says 0.2/0.8. And it actually comes up in the measurement side, it says 0.2, 0.31, and so it's telling me that your first 2/10 measurement is to be made at a depth of 0.31. Okay? So I'm going to set it at 0.31 and press measure. So this is similar to the 6/10 measurement, except I'm taking a 2/10 and an 8/10 measurement. That measurement's from the water surface. And I'm going to take the 2/10 and the 8/10 and take the average and use that as my mean velocity. So I have about 15 seconds to go, so I still use the same averaging time for each point. For my 6/10